Good morning. I am Fred Wooden, your new interim minister, and it's so good to be with the Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation in Arizona, in Chandler, in your house. This is in some ways your body, and I'm here to honor the spirit that occupies this body. I'm here because you are here not in body, but in spirit. And I'm here with those who have no place to call home because you, in the generosity of your spirit, have made this space available to those who have no place to sleep. Because we all know that in the end, none of us are ever finally at home on this journey through life. And so we welcome those fellow travelers of body that come with us, travelers of the spirit, because we are, and you'll hear this over and over again in my tenure with you, we are all pilgrims of the spirit and pilgrims in life. To mark the beginning of my time with you, I've chosen words from one of my favorite poets, Denise Levertov, who wrote, "Marvelous truth confront us at every turn, in every guise, iron ball, egg, dark horse, shadow, cloud of breath on the air, dwell in our crowded hearts, our steaming bathrooms, our kitchens full of things to be done, the ordinary streets. Thrust close your smile that we may know you, terrible joy." That's what we want from life, to confront the marvelous truth that is present in all things, even the most prosaic and dull. We want to be possessed by this truth, to know its astounding, terrible joy. And sometimes it appears, sometimes even in worship. We begin as one people, and that's why as we begin our worship, we gather everyone together of all ages. And I now invite my partner in ministry, Marcy Bodwin, to summon us to our first moment of worship.
Good morning. I am Marcy Bodwin, the Director of Faith Formation here at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are just about ready for our Time for All Ages, Story for the Children. So any families that have kids around and about, gather them in front of your screen. While we give you a minute to do that, I want to invite you all to participate in our first socially distanced Pebble in gathering. So choose a small stone from around your home and bring it to VUU this week. We have a couple of days and times that some of us will be waiting for you in the parking lot. So Monday morning, 8 to 9 a.m., Tuesday from noon to 1 p.m., and Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. One or two of us will be in the parking lot. We'll take a picture of your family like this one. That's me with my grandkids. And we'll put together a little presentation for our Pebble in gathering. Because a spiritual community is the stories that we share with each other. So share your story about why you became part of this community. Post it on the VUU Facebook page, make a little video, write it down so you always have this story. As always, after worship today, we will be taking time to have breakout rooms. You're all invited to stay for that. And our thought-provoking prompt today is to think about a time that you were lost and what you found that you didn't know you would discover. That will be in the chat for you just before we go to breakout rooms. So our Time for All Ages today. The book that I chose today is apparently one of Reverend Wooden's favorite childhood stories. But I think after you watch this little video I made for you, you will notice that Fred may have a little bit to learn about what it's like to really live in the Southwest.
Gila Monsters Meet You at the Airport by Marjorie Weinman Charmette, pictures by Byron Barton. I live at 165 East 95th Street, New York City, and I'm going to stay here forever. My mother and father are moving out west. They say I have to go too. They say I can't stay here forever. Out west, nobody plays baseball because they're too busy chasing buffaloes. And there's cactus everywhere you look, but if you don't look, you have to stand up just as soon as you sit down. Out west, it takes 15 minutes just to say hello, like this. Howdy, partner. Out west, I'll look silly all the time. I'll have to wear chaps and spurs and a bandana and a hat so big that nobody can find me underneath it. And I'll have to ride a horse to school every day, and I don't know how. Out west, everybody grows up to be a sheriff. I want to be a subway driver. My best friend is Seymour, and we like to eat salami sandwiches together. Out west, I probably won't have any friends, but if I do, they'll be named Tex or Slim, and we'll eat chili and beans for breakfast and lunch and dinner, while I miss Seymour and salami. I'm on my way out west. It's cool in the airplane. The desert is so hot you can collapse, and then the buzzards circle overhead, but no one rescues you because it's real life and not the movies. There are clouds out the window. No buzzards yet. I'm looking at a map. Before, whenever I looked at a map, I always knew my house was on the right, but no more. Now I'm in the middle of the map, and I'm going left, out west. Seymour says there are Gila monsters and horned toads out west, and I read it in a book, so I know it's so. But Seymour says they meet you at the airport. We're here, out west. I don't know what a Gila monster or horned toad looks like, but I don't think I see any at the airport. I see a boy in a cowboy hat. He looks like Seymour, but I know his name is Tex. Hi, I say. Hi, he says. I'm moving east. Great, I say. Great, he says? What's so great about it? Don't you know that the streets are full of gangsters? They all wear flowers in their lapels so they look honest, but they zoom around in big cars with screeching brakes. You have to jump out of their way. In the east, it snows and blows all the time, except for 5 minutes when it's spring and summer. And you have to live on the 50th floor. Airplanes fly through your bedroom, and you've got to duck fast. They ran out of extra space in the East a long time ago. It's so crowded people sit on top of each other when they ride to work. And alligators live in the sewers. I read it in a book, so I know it's so. Then the mother and the father of the boy who looks like Seymour but isn't grab his hand and he goes off. Sometimes the alligators get out, he yells to me, and they wait for you at the airport. It's warm, but there's a nice breeze. We're in a taxi riding to our new house. No horses yet. I don't see any buffalo stampedes either. I see a restaurant just like the one in my old neighborhood. I see some kids playing baseball. I see a horse. Hey, that's a great-looking horse. I'm going to ask my mother and father for one like it. Here's our house. Some kids are riding their bikes in front of it. I hope one of them is named Slim. Tomorrow I'm writing a long letter to Seymour. I'll tell him I'm sending it by Pony Express. Seymour will believe me. Back east, they don't know much about us Westerners.
Please bring your candles or chalices or whatever you have and join me in saying our chalice lighting words. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. Good morning. I'm Mary Rothschild, your worship associate this morning, and I'm truly delighted you have chosen to Zoom with us today at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. And I hope you know how welcome you are, whatever your background, your ethnicity, your political predilections, your family structure, or whom you choose to love. Radical hospitality is at the heart of Unitarian Universalism, and today we have a very special welcome for our new interim minister, the Reverend Dr. Fred Wooden, who is joining us for the first time. If we were all together in our sanctuary, I know we'd be clapping and standing and maybe even cheering now to welcome you, Reverend Wooden. but take it as a given that we are incredibly happy to have you guide us through this time of transition, to figure out where we are now in this strange time, and to imagine what we want our future to become with a new settled minister in 2 years. Reverend Wooden's sermon today is based on the song Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, written by my personal hero, the great folk singer Pete Seeger in 1967. Seen at the time as a profound criticism of America's role in the Vietnam War, it was controversial from the beginning. Banned by CBS when Seeger recorded it for the Smothers Brothers show, and only after they fought that censorship was Seeger allowed to sing it live on February 25th, 1968, just 4 weeks before President Lyndon Johnson, widely believed to be the big fool of the song, dropped out of his race for re-election. From the get-go, I love that song, and it was a given that I went to every Pete Seeger concert that came to wherever I was in my whole life. It's brought back all kinds of memories to be thinking about it now. In fact, for months, I have said to friends that the only year I can compare 2020 to in terms of despair, fear, and foreboding is 1968, when I was 23. Working in several primary states for Eugene McCarthy, demonstrating against the war, doing draft counseling for AFSC, taking young men across the border into Canada, and also sort of working on my graduate program in American history at the University of Washington, which was my actual job. From childhood, I had always admired Pete Seeger for his singing and songwriting, for not backing down to Joe McCarthy, for his support of workers and unions, for his commitment to civil rights, for his dedication to peace. For decades, I would wait every fall to be called by Gallup pollsters, sort of like Lucy holding the football for Charlie, to tell them that the man I most admired in America was Pete Seeger. But to my great sadness, they never called. When I was working on my dissertation on the Northern students who went south to work in the civil rights movement in 1964 and 65, I followed Pete Seeger's work with the Freedom Singers throughout Mississippi and saw how he raised money for their organizations from concerts he gave in the North. Once, many years later, when I was working on my book, he came to Tempe to give a concert. And I wrote him asking if I could interview him about his work in the South. He graciously agreed, and I did interview him in his little dressing room in the basement of Gamage at the same time as a terrible band was practicing awful rock music some rooms away, the noise visibly irritating him. Alas, my interview with Pete Seeger was the worst interview I ever conducted in my entire career. It was awful. Maybe because I so admired him, maybe because I was so in awe and overwhelmed. I really don't know why, but trust me, it was terrible. Occasionally, when I had the nerve, I would play tiny segments of that oral history to my oral history classes years later to illustrate definitively what not to do in a good interview. But my incompetence did nothing to diminish my admiration for a man who never gave up his willingness to fight for our highest ideals and stay the course. Further, terrible interview or not, I've always been grateful I was able to meet him and talk to him about his work, his vision for America, and the power of music to bring people together. At the time I did the interview, I was not a UU, nor did I know that Pete Seeger was a member of the Community UU Church of New York City. But many years later, I read his statement to BeliefNet about God, which is exemplary of the varying beliefs we UUs hold. And this is edited. Nobody knows for sure, but people undoubtedly get feelings which are not explainable, and they feel they are talking to God. I feel most spiritual when I'm out in the woods. I feel part of nature, or looking up at the stars. I used to say I was an atheist. Now I say it's all according to your definition of God. According to my definition of God, I'm not an atheist because I think God is everything. Whenever I open my eyes, I'm looking at God. Whenever I'm listening to something, I'm listening to God. I feel strongly that I'm trying to raise people's spirits to get together. I think God is literally everything, because I don't believe that something can come out of nothing. And so there's always been something. The last time I saw Pete Seeger in person was at the concert on the Mall the day before President Obama's inauguration in 2009, leading thousands of us and all the performers on stage in the concert's final song, "This Land is Your Land." He was 89 and he died 5 years later in 2014. If Pete Seeger were alive today, I'm sure he would be playing his banjo and singing "Waist Deep in the Big Muddy," "We Shall Overcome," and "This Land is Your Land" in demonstrations all over the country. His last major project was working for environmental causes from his boat, the Clearwater, on the Hudson River. And I know if he were here today, he'd be giving concerts to raise money for Black Lives Matter, just like he did for the Freedom Singers. I'm also sure he would be working to bring more music, grace, and kindness to our world, because along with his fierce beliefs, he had a light that shone out to everyone he came near, which he expressed fully through his music. So when I get depressed about the state of the nation, and I am depressed, which I am today, I ask Alexa to play me a few Pete Seeger songs, and they inspire me. I take a deep breath, and I try myself to persevere like he always did, even when the current big fool says to push on. So welcome to you all in Zoom land, and welcome, Reverend Wooden, and Lashana Tova to those of you who may be celebrating New Year this weekend. And now let's settle into our service and join our music director, Katie Seifert, for our first hymn, one of my favorites, "Let It Be a Dance."
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a willow with the wind, let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
See those hands clasped one to another? That is what a congregation is, forming something larger than any one person could form. Like the dance that Katie was singing about, it takes more than one to make something grow and change and blossom. When we talk about an offering, what you're offering is yourself, but we think of it as money, but it's not. It is who you are right now that you can join with others to create in a new way. So yes, there are numbers you can call and clicks you can make, but the point is when you contribute from yourself at whatever point and with whatever generosity you have, you're enlarging the circle, you're deepening the well, you're making the vision closer to reality. Please consider making your gift today or tomorrow or the next day so that we can not only continue this work, we can grow it.
Now, as we move into the time for centering, let's take a moment and acknowledge the ground beneath our feet. Notice the chair that supports your seat. Take a moment to be quiet and listen to the breath that gives you life. Perhaps take one big breath. Release the morning. And please join us in singing our hymn, The Lone Wild Bird.
Still with thee, nor leaves thy side, and I rest in thee, great Spirit, come and rest in me. The ends of the earth are in thy hand, the seas dark deep and far off land, and I am thine, I rest in thee, great Spirit, come and rest in me.
Thank you, Katie, so much. I've enjoyed getting to know her and Marcy, and I'm going to meet all of you in due time. A time of prayer, meditation, whatever that means, it is a pausing point. Nature is at a pausing point right now. It's the autumnal equinox when there's just about as much daylight as there is darkness. And that is the dance we're doing right now with the seasons. And it's at times like these that spiritual traditions find meaning. Ancient traditions that revere the seasons themselves and the forces of nature. But it's no accident that this is when the ancient Jewish practices focus on a new year. In that tradition, this is the beginning and the new beginning of creation itself. And the 10 days that began on Friday evening will conclude with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, at 1 month, quite literally, a time for restoring that which has come apart. I think that's a really good model for our meditation time. We all tend to wander off from time to time. Our to-do lists get very long. Our tasks become innumerable and insuperable. We begin to fall apart, and we need to reclaim our wholeness. Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach wrote a simple song that speaks to the task of the High Holy Days, but it's one that is always on our doorstep spiritually. I'll try to sing it, but don't hold me too accountable for being in tune. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. What a great image, to return to the land of your soul. For many people in this community, this place is the land of their soul, but we are required by circumstance to wander away, but we will come back. The pendulum will swing and we will gather here again, but then we'll go away again in an eternal dance of going and coming, just as we breathe in and breathe out, as the days and the nights go forward. But this is the season of return. The season of return from ancient days and even for today. And you want so much to be here, to be who you are, what you are, where you are. But I am here to tell you that wherever you are is where you need to be today. And that the journey you are on now will bring you here again. And you will be born and reborn again and again. For that is the way of the Spirit. And so we pause to breathe in and out, to collect inward and give outward, and know that who we are and what we are and where we are is always present in the heart. Amen. Now I invite Katie to share with us music I believe Mary just mentioned a few moments ago.
Join us on a story, a song, called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy by Pete Seeger. It was back in 1942, I was a member of a good platoon. We were maneuvers in Louisiana one night by the light of the moon. The captain told us to ford a river, that's how it all begun. We were knee-deep in the big muddy, the big fool said to push on. The sergeant said, "Sir, are you sure this is the best way back to the base?" "Sergeant, go on, I forded this river about a mile above this place. It'll be a little soggy, but just keep slogging, we'll soon be on dry ground." We were waist deep in the big muddy, the big fool said to push on. The sergeant said, "Sir, with all this equipment, no man will be able to swim." "Sergeant, don't be a nervous Nelly," the captain said to him. "All we need is a little determination, men, follow me, I'll lead on." We were neck deep in the big muddy, the big fool said to push on. All at once the moon clouded over, we heard a gurgling cry. A few seconds later, the captain's helmet was all that floated by. The sergeant said, "Turn around, man, I'm in charge from now on." And we just made it out of the big muddy with the captain dead and gone. We stripped and dived and found his body stuck in the old quicksand. I guess he didn't know that the water was deeper than the place he'd once before been. Another stream had joined the big muddy about a half a mile from where we gone. We were lucky to escape from the big muddy when the big fool said to push on. Well, I'm not going to point any moral, I'll leave that to yourself. Maybe you're still walking, you're still talking, you'd like to keep your head. But every time I read the papers, that old feeling comes in. We're waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. We're waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool says to push on. We're waist deep in the big muddy, when the big fool says to push on. We're waist deep, neck deep, soon a tall man be over his head. We're waist deep in the big money, when the big fool says to push on. Oh, push on. Oh, push on. Push on.
Oh, I like that song. Now, I'm going to pull it all together, at least try to, because like the kid in the story, I actually lived in New York. And when I thought about going out west, I had to remind myself that there were no Gila monsters or snakes or things to greet me at the airport. Not that I didn't already know that, but you live in a somewhat different world than I do up in the Great Lakes, where it was almost freezing this morning. Don't be too jealous. But New York had some advantages years ago when I lived there. And one of them is you really do meet famous people. You just can't help it. There's so many of us there all at once. And here's a little story about one of those meetings. I was serving a church in Brooklyn and a member died. And I was asked to do a small private service down by the East River. And they said, come on down, we've already arranged for the music. And I went down to the barge where the service was to be held. There was the family, maybe another 10 people. And in walks the musician, Pete Seeger. I could barely do the service. Now, I've got to tell you, he was personally not only gracious, he's actually very shy in person. But the moment he puts on the guitar or the banjo and sings, he lights up. That is clearly where his joy lives. Now, you've already heard from Mary about his great legacy. And if you're not old enough to remember him as a force in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you can hear in that song that it's still quite pertinent. We can thank him for songs like Turn, 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 Good Night, Irene, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? He helped to bring back This Land Is Your Land, which came from Woody Guthrie, whom he knew. But I want to go to that song that Katie and her husband just gave us and did really, really well. Think about maybe that last verse when Pete sings, well, I'm not going to point to any moral, I'll leave that for yourself. And I think that's honest because he wrote that song 2 generations ago, and we're still finding value in it and pertinence right now. But every time I read the papers, that old feeling comes on. Is that true for you too? I'll bet it is. The pandemic and everything that came with it, isolation, unemployment, depression, uncertainty, kind of knee deep in a big muddy of this illness. And then we added to that the uproar and justified uprising over police brutality, reminding us of old and pervasive racist systems and behaviors, and the protests that erupted here and there, some of them quite violently, which were then exploited by some politicians in an election year that is truly perhaps the most intense in living memory. And let's not forget the wildfires out west of here, whose smoke is crowding our skies, underlying the climate change that some people refuse to believe is taking place. Did you see those pictures of San Francisco a couple of weeks ago? I mean, I've been to Delhi and Beijing, and I would have rather have been there those days. Oh, did I forget anything? Let me think now. Murder hornets. We now have murder hornets, and of course, there are the fire ants and the killer bees. What's next? Flying monkeys, zombie apocalypse? We are not to be blamed if we feel more than waist deep in the big muddy of 2020. Like the song, I'm not going to point to any cause or any moral. I'll leave that for yourself. But one thing I know is that where we are now as a nation has been brewing for a long time. And like making maple syrup on the stove, it can simmer a long time before it boils over really fast. We can all look back and see how we got here, even if we couldn't see then where we were going. More innocent, but no less important, are the many changes this spiritual community has shouldered on top of all these changes. 3 of 4 staff have changed in the last 9 months. With them went continuity, familiarity, consistency, and memory. All congregations everywhere are having, including you, and you have to do it with all the changes you have had that are unique to you as well. With that in mind, I think there's more that this song can teach us. Let's look at the captain, the character who led them into the big muddy. What did he die from? You know, drowning, of course, but it's really what we call hubris. He thought he knew the river. He was wrong. He vanished when they were neck deep, when any sensible person would have turned around and said, hey, wait a minute, we're in almost over our heads, and eventually he was. You remember what he said? We stripped and dived and found his body stuck in the old quicksand. I guess he didn't know that the water was deeper than the place he'd once before been. That's a clear example of the proverb we all know, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But he did. He kept digging, sure that he would get out of the hole by making it deeper. The song speaks of quicksand, which is another great image, that there was more going on than the captain realized. But he was so sure of himself that he did not see the whole picture. He only saw what he thought was the whole picture, because that was all he knew. And he couldn't admit anything else to his worldview. He got stuck in the quicksand of his mind first, and that led him to being sucked down by the quicksand of reality in the river. On a far more modest scale, I have a personal story to share. I was probably 4 years old when the family, that would be me, my younger brother, my parents, and my first of 2 sisters, went out for a drive in the country, my folks and all, and that was in the day when you went for a drive. You know, that was the fun thing to do, to go for a drive. And my dad, who loved maps, oh, did he love maps? Detailed topographical maps that showed the terrain and where everything was supposed to be. And he would direct my mom, who was driving, and he wanted to go someplace out there in rural Maryland where we were living, at the Maryland part, not the rural part. It was summer, and Dad told Mom to turn down a dirt road because there was some historic site down the road there a ways. And about a mile later, we came to a stream. It wasn't deep, it wasn't muddy, but it was there. The map said it was a ford. That is to say, it isn't so deep you can't drive across it. So Dad got out to help guide her across the stream. He rolled up his pants, walked to the other side, and made gestures a little to the left, a little to the right. And somewhere in the middle of that, the front tires got into some sand. It wasn't quicksand, but she couldn't move. Now, Dad was very confident that we could get across, but reality intervened and said, no, you're not. So what do you do? Well, we got out of the car, turned around and walked back up the road. My brother, me, my dad, and my mother carrying our little sister. It took a long while to get that 1 mile because I was 4 and my brother was 2. And by the time we got there, there was only one thing there at the corner of the dirt road and the asphalt road, and that was a rickety old house, kind of a shack. And I'll finish that story in a moment. They say it's not the destination, but the journey, and that is profoundly true for we who are interim clergy. We go everywhere, but we arrive nowhere. I'm with you, but only briefly. And as we say in the trade, we come pre-fired. Because I'm only here for a while, I have no stake in the long-term outcomes of this congregation, nothing to gain by avoiding the tough questions and nothing to lose by asking them. Thanks to that, you can be sure I'm going to challenge you, push you in ways that a longer-term minister might be hesitant to do. But because I am also a clergy person, I will celebrate you, love you right now. Not for what you could be, but for who you are right now. Because my time is short, you will get to see all my warts and wrinkles real fast. For example, I will make lots of mistakes. I've made several already in this sermon and in this worship service. Because leadership is not about skills, but about something called wisdom. And nothing makes you wiser than making mistakes. So I must be pretty wise by now because I've made tons of mistakes. My dad was wiser that day. He knew that what it says on the map ain't always true in reality. Mostly. More important is realizing that my strength, his strength, your strength is not being good at something, but being good for something. And that's what a mission is about. What are you good for? And then now is the time to think about those things as we pause between one long-term clergy person and another. I will give you a clue right now. I don't grow churches. I've tried my whole life, failed in each one. I grow spirits. I grow missions. I grow hearts. I grow commitment to things beyond today and tomorrow. Yes, there are tasks that we are going to have to do to make ready for that next settled minister, and I'm going to help you do them. And I'll talk about those tasks in some detail in the next week or two. But again, these are not tasks or goals or benchmarks you have to do to succeed. It is whether those tasks help you to grow broader in wisdom, taller in hope, deeper in faith as you reach that next decision point and select a new spiritual leader to go with you. Now back to my story. I remember being welcomed into that poor house by an older couple who were so poor they used a rug as a room divider. The wife seemed quite old to me, but I've learned that hardship often ages someone faster than their numerical years. The man took my dad down the road in his pickup truck to the nearest garage, which wasn't very near, obviously. They did not have a telephone. If memory serves, they had no electricity. And we saw each other through kerosene lamps as the sun set. The wife offered us food, but Mom declined, fearful of taking from their meager larder. It was a while before Dad came back with the wrecker, and it was well past sunset before he was driving up in the car, none the worse for wear, thankfully, and we drove back home. That day lingers more vividly than most in my young life, and I'm glad of it. We were waist deep in our own big muddy that day, but Dad knew better than to push on. We had to change our plans, find out how to get help, and accept it from unlikely people who would seem to have little to offer. And if we did not see what we expected to see, we had a whole different adventure. And that was always our plan, wasn't it? And that's what we're going to do together. We're going to get waist deep in our own big muddy over the months and years ahead. We will change plans. We will find out we need help. We will accept it from unlikely sources and from those who apparently we didn't think had anything to teach, but that's what's going to happen. And if we do not arrive where we initially thought we were going to arrive, we will have an adventure. And we will find ourselves in a place of readiness for a future that we have yet to discover. So if right now you feel a little swamped, if you're unsure of what to do and where to go, so am I. But I will make this promise. We will get stuck. We will have to backtrack. We will get dirty. We will get turned around, but we will have an adventure. And we will do it together. I want to thank you right now for allowing me to join you in this interim time of your life as a spiritual community. I guess I should have read another book now that I think about it. Oh, The Places You Go, All the Things That You Do by Dr. Seuss, one of my biblical heroes. But if we are kind and forgiving and decent, things sorely lacking among our nation's leaders right now, you will be where you need to be in 2 years. And your next spiritual leader will be there waiting for you. And I will be cheering you on as you head into your future. And so we begin. I have for 40 years ended my sermons always with words that I value as a preacher, and I'll share them with you because they are me, not you. These words come out of the Jewish scripture, in which the speaker says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight." However God appears to you, whatever is truly lasting and holy, I pray that my words be heard in that context, that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight. Thou, all of you thous, who are my strength and my salvation. Amen. I think I've said enough. Katie, it's time for us to sing again.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may ill fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by. By faith made strong, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This heart through all the world grow chill will keep you warm. Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drawn, the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
Mary? It's Mary.
So please join me in saying our words to extinguish our chalice. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connections to each other and this community remain. May its light guide us this week as we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again.
Paul Robeson wrote words that I have recited many times to many churches when he said, "Sorrow will one day turn to joy. All that breaks the heart and oppresses the soul will one day give place to peace and understanding, and everyone will be free." That simple faith is what sends us forth into the world day in and day out, week by week. Sorrow will one day turn to joy. And though we may be disappointed today and tomorrow, and even next week and next year, we will not give up that hope. that sorrow will turn to joy, and peace and understanding will result, and everyone will be free. With that hope, we go into the world, and I say, may you be blessed until we gather again in spirit. Amen and amen.
We will soon be in our breakout rooms. We hope you'll stay, but otherwise you can leave. And now our question will be in the chat. Thank you, everyone, and have a good week.